Hi, everyone. We're going to get started with our first panel today. We are going to be talking about elevating youth voice in civics education. If you are an educator or a teacher coming from NCSS, welcome. We're so excited to have you. If you're just a local teacher or just a huge fan of GBH, we're so happy you stopped by. Before we dig in, you might be wondering who I am. My name is Nicki Sirianni. I'm the Education Outreach and Marketing Manager at GBH Education, and I'm joined here.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Gardner, and I'm a senior media producer in the education department, and I oversee video production for civics, social studies, and history curriculum, as well as our original youth-facing video series, which I'm here to talk to you about today. So about 5 years ago, we embarked on an initiative to center youth voices in the civics media that we produce. What did that mean? It meant not only featuring and amplifying youth perspectives in the video we produce, but also partnering with youth to get their feedback and input to shape the materials that we create. So a prime example of this approach is Youth Stand Up, a media-rich digital civic action curriculum designed to inspire, equip, and empower middle schoolers to become change makers. We're now piloting this in schools across the nation thanks to generous funding from the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. Comprised of 6 interactive modules that take students through the steps of a civic action project, Youth Stand Up offers video profiles of young civic leaders, explainer videos, and a skill-building toolkit to aid in the process. So when we started developing Youth Stand Up in 2019, and you and I were both key to this effort, we knew that it was very important to make sure we were meeting the needs of teachers who were being newly tasked with teaching students the skills that they needed to carry out a civic action project. But we also wanted to make sure that we were reaching the young people that this was designed for in a relevant and authentic way that traditional civics education was often failing to do. Research showed there was a disconnect. Young people were sitting in their classrooms, learning about civics, but they weren't making the connection to their lives and their lived experiences. So with Youth Stand Up, we wanted to create something that would cause young people to feel excited and inspired about their power to create change in their communities, to be able to make connections between what they were learning and their lived experience, and to understand the reasons why they should care about engaging in the civic process. So in order to do that, we needed to talk to the audience that we were trying to reach.
We sure
did. And that was 8th graders. So a small group of us went out and we went into the classrooms and we visited 8th graders. We went into 4 different classrooms. We talked to over 100 students to get their feedback on the video styles that they preferred and they were engaged with. So Nicki and I and another group did this together. We showed 4 videos to them. It ranged from very traditional documentary style format. They all featured a youth perspective or a youth host, all the way to an Instagram story where there was a young man who was on the ground at a March for Peace. He was reporting on the ground, speaking direct to camera, and it was an Instagram story, so it was very much
not
a social
highly
media
produced.
style.
Yep.
Exactly, very rough in its production values. So we suspected what they might prefer, but in fact, the data was overwhelming. So these 8th graders really responded to that Instagram story. And some of the quotes that they said to us that I really appreciated was, I like it. It's in a format and style I'm used to. I feel more connected, and I will want to care more. I like how relatable it is, as well as the format. I like the energy and how it encourages. We feel like we're there. And then the last one, the video inspired me to do something big. So we also went out and asked youth about every aspect of Youth Stand Up in addition to the video style. They weighed in on the look and feel, the branding, the tone of the editorial, and the logo. And sometimes we realized that what we thought they were going to prefer is really not what they prefer.
We were so wrong.
We had a favorite logo. We sent a survey out to over 200 young people, and they came back, and that was like their least favorite logo.
The end of that logo.
Exactly. So we've now created a library of social media friendly style and length, which is 4 to 6 minutes, civic leader videos that was informed by that focus group research. So this collection of videos We really want to provide students with inspiration from their near peers, but also a roadmap that shows them the steps that they can take to develop and plan and put into action a civic action project. So it features contemporary and historic stories of youth civic leaders, and diversity in all ways, demographically, geographically, and also in terms of strategies. So we have someone who's using poetry. We have someone who started an anti-bullying platform, other people that are leading marches or protests. We really want every young person to be able to find their way in through these stories. So we're gonna show you a clip right now from one of these youth profile videos, civic leader videos. This is Shiva Rajbandhari, who ran for school board in Idaho.
Hey y'all, my name's Shiva Rajbandhari. I'm the first student ever elected to the local school board here in Boise, Idaho, and I'm here to tell you about the importance of local elections. We hear a lot about national politics, but it's those local elections, school board, city council, and state legislature, that make the majority of decisions that influence our day-to-day lives.
I was prompted to take civic action when I first learned about the climate crisis. In Boise schools, we began organizing for a climate justice plan for our school district and began campaigning for a clean energy commitment and long-term sustainability plan for our school district. And so we sent postcards to our board members, we sent dozens of emails, but over and over again, it just felt like we were being shut down. We were told that we were too young, and it was clear that our school board members were really dismissive of student voices and didn't understand the power that students could bring to the table in making decisions for our school district. And that was when we started to ask, what would it look like to have a student on the school board? And so we decided to run a campaign. And in June of 2022, I announced that I would be seeking election to the school board. And we used the skills that we learned in running a campaign for a clean energy commitment for our district to win an election to the school board. We collected endorsements from politicians, legislators, city council members, and even the local newspaper, the Idaho Statesman. Election day was a roller coaster. And at about like 1:30 in the morning, we learned that I had won and that I'd be sworn in the next week. And we were ecstatic. Being sworn in, and that was a little bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie. It became very real very quickly. And it was exciting because there were decisions being made in our boardroom that I knew how they were impacting students in a way that not a single other person in that room understood. And we demanded real action on the climate crisis. And when they had to see us face to face, they passed a collective commitment on clean energy and began to put our school district on track to transition away from fossil fuels and towards a clean energy future that we deserve.
So good. I love the YSU videos because I think they marry this perfect balance between being aspirational and really impressive, but also being really relatable and accessible for everyday student. I think the way he just mapped out what he did right there is the perfect example of that. So, you know, the people we feature are amazing in these videos, but you and I have been thinking, how do we also help elevate the voice of students who are in the classroom? When we first started talking about YSU, it feels like many years ago, we always wanted some sort of a pitch competition or a challenge or a youth summit or some way to bring people in the classroom together to celebrate the work that they were doing as they were doing these YSU projects. And that idea has shifted throughout the years between what's been feasible. But one of the joys of being in the public media space is we have stations all across the country doing amazing work, and we get to learn from those stations. And KQED is one of California's stations, and they have been running these, what they call youth media challenges, where they help empower students to create their own pieces of media in the classroom and give teachers guidance on how to execute these pieces of media. And they're very open-ended with what kids can choose to do for their media topics. But we had the opportunity to partner with them to run a YSU Youth Media Challenge, where we can now have students in the classroom create either a video, a podcast or audio piece, or an editorial cartoon, and share about their YSU project or about the issue in their community that's really important to them. And then once they create that piece in the classroom, they submit it to KQED's platform, where it's then shared with kids all across the country. So it really gives them a meaningful opportunity to have their work shared and celebrated, and given a platform that they might not normally have access to. Once it's submitted to this online website, kids from all across the country can see each other's videos, and I think it provides a really important opportunity for kids to see what are challenges happening in another community? How is that similar to what I'm facing in my community? And really get that experience of learning from one another, while also having this very meaningful way to have your voice amplified. It helps kids build their digital footprint, and it helps them kind of build their portfolio, so to speak. But I think, again, not every kid is maybe going to be able to lead a protest in Washington, but they can create a video about something that they care about and then have that work be kind of elevated and shared on our platform. So we are currently piloting this. 3 teachers right now are doing the Youth Media Challenge. They're giving us feedback on what we've created, but I'd love to play a clip of one of the videos we've gotten from an 8th grade student in Nevada right now, so you can see what's come through.
Welcome to Voices for Change, a podcast where we explore the complexities of racial equality and justice. I'm your host, Alizar. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's as timely as it is timeless: the pursuit of racial equality and justice in America. Growing up in Las Vegas, I experienced firsthand the subtle and not so subtle ways in which racism manifested. I remember incidents in school, in public spaces, even within my own community, where I felt the sting of prejudice. These experiences shaped my worldview and ignited a desire to understand the root causes of racial inequality and work towards a more just society. To grasp the complexities of racial inequality today, it's essential to acknowledge the historical context. From slavery to segregation, the legacy of systemic racism continues to shape our society. The fight for racial equality is not a new one, but rather a long struggle that has seen victories and setbacks.
So that's an 8th grader, and I think you all can agree he is made for NPR. I think we got to hire him as soon as he graduates. But that just gives you a taste of some of this student-created work, which is, in my opinion, incredibly impressive for an 8th grade student.
I agree. I love that video
I
so
love
much.
that. Yep.
So fast forward 5 years, and we have been developing and expanding Youth Stand Up, and we've also produced additional youth-facing series like Why It Matters for the U.S. History Collection. We also collaborated with Frontline on the youth-facing initiative Frontline Short Docs, and along the way, we've continued to work with youth, to listen to them, to get their feedback, and we have gathered some insights about the kind of media style and preferences that they have. So first off, the sort of long lingering pans over black and white photographs that are many people might think of the hallmark of a traditional documentary. Not a fan, mostly not a fan. They prefer a fast pace, so they want to keep things moving along with the style and the visuals and the content. So keep it quick. They also want and appreciate visual signposting. So this is something that's obviously very common in social media. That's layering in additional information by graphics, text on screen, title cards. That helps to provide context and to drive engagement. They also are compelled by strong storytelling with a distinct point of view. And that is potentially, but not always necessarily, from a youth perspective. So preferably from a youth perspective, but not always and necessarily. And finally, in news that will come as a surprise to no one who has ever met a teenager, they do not like it if they feel like you are trying too hard. So they are very quick to sniff out anything that comes across as pandering, and quick to dismiss it as cringe. Yeah. Which, I'm not going to lie, it's a little hard to hear that.
Yeah,
but
we
have heard that.
Grow thick skin working with these teens. Yeah.
So when we set out last year to develop a new youth-facing video series as part of the new Civics Collection on PBS LearningMedia, made possible by support for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We wanted to put everything that we had learned into action in this series. And we also wanted to up our game and center youth voices even more by putting media creation in the hands of our subjects. So Game Changers is the name of that new series. It focuses on everyday citizens who are exercising their rights in a modern day context. In contrast to Youth Stand Up, the stories are narrowly focused around a specific constitutional or civic right, exploring how citizens exercise that right and what civic skills they needed to do that. After watching the videos, students are asked to analyze the videos, so they have to talk about how the right was being exercised, the strategy that was employed, and the resulting impact. There are 7 short videos that make up the series. They're in a short form documentary style with what we call a narrated show and tell approach. So this is basically, we asked our subjects to go out and use their phones to shoot part of the stories in their own voices from their own perspective. We think of this as our way of doing on-the-ground reporting with them that's comprised of footage of key places, events, and moments that bring some of that direct-to-camera immediacy and vitality that you find in social media to the series, while also further centering the voices of the people that we're featuring. So we also doubled down on getting youth feedback. We had a youth advisory board that worked with us. They were from all across the country, 12 teens, a very diverse group from all across the country who gave feedback on every aspect of the Civics Collection, in addition to the Game Changers pilot. So we had them watch the pilot, and they gave us feedback in a survey form and also in a very lively focus group where we actually got to hear from them on Zoom about what they liked, what they didn't like. As was the case that we had found earlier, they did not hold back. They told us what was working for them, and they also let us know what was not working for them. So they watched our voting rights pilot, which is featuring a young woman actually in Massachusetts named Samantha Bevins, and her efforts to lower the voting age in Massachusetts to allow voters who will be 17 in the primary but 18 in the general election to vote in the primaries. And this is actually a law that's on the books in many states across the country, but it's not here in Massachusetts. They watched the pilot and they gave us their thoughts. They wanted a clearer timeline. They wanted to know, they were getting a little confused, and they wanted more text on screen to let us know where we were in the process with the timeline. This was really helpful for us and something that we ended up then became like a key element of the series going ahead. However, in general, they thought, yes on the visual signposting, but we were trying too hard. We were getting that cringe feedback. It was too much of it. It's getting distracting. So we pulled back a little bit, and we found a happy medium where we're definitely using graphics, text on screen, visual signposting, but we kept it sort of a cleaner, more streamlined approach. They also wanted to know more about Samantha and how she felt during this process. They wanted to feel a little more connected to Samantha and her story. So when we cut our next version, we made sure that we brought some of that in so that we could build in that sort of narrative storytelling emotional connection. So we are going to show you the pilot right now. We're going to play Samantha. You will notice that there's some visual footage here. And that was filmed by Samantha, filmed and narrated by her on her phone as she gave us a tour of the Massachusetts State House.
Hi guys, I'm here at the State House. I'm here with the Election Laws Committee Chair for my bill. This is super exciting to be in a place where all decisions are made.
The best thing you can do to be an actively engaged civilian and citizen of the United States is to exercise your right to vote. The problem I learned in my community was that 27 other states and Washington, D.C. have a law that already exists that allows 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the general election, but who are still 17 for the preceding primary, to vote in those primaries. I learned that Massachusetts was not one of those states, and that I was one of those voters who was going to be 18 by the 2020 general election, but who would still be 17 for the preceding primary. And so I wanted myself and other first-time voters to have the same right that other students did in 27 other states. And so I decided that I was going to try to reach out to my representative officials and see if we could do anything about making it a law in Massachusetts, and that's what I did. And I called the office of my state representative. I was pretty nervous to make this call, but from the get-go, she was extremely supportive, and I made a research report for her and her team, and we came up with it together over the course of 2 months. It was about 15 pages. So my state representative suggested that the next step would be to call my state senator, because you would need to have both chambers have someone sponsor the legislation. He was extremely supportive, and he said that whatever legislation that we drafted for the House side, he would then file on the Senate side. And so at that point, I had both chambers supporting it, and also luckily both parties. And so what ended up happening is that COVID-19 pandemic hit, so that legislative session was interrupted by the pandemic, and lots of things were shifted around. And so I worked on it in the next legislative session, which was my senior year of high school. And a similar thing happened where they still had to focus on finalizing legislation regarding the end of the pandemic. So right now I'm in my third session with this legislative effort.
Here I am next to one of the committee rooms. I'm walking through the hallway where a lot of the different offices are for the different state reps. I'm here meeting with the chair of my committee about the next steps for my bill.
I testified at the State House. This bill was put in the Election Laws Committee in Massachusetts.
This legislation is very personal to me. I want all the generations of first-time voters in Massachusetts still to come to have the same opportunity that first-time voters from 27 other states already have to vote in the primaries. It is not too late to make this dream that I, along with many youth in the Commonwealth, share a reality for the 2024 election cycle. Thank you for your consideration.
The bill will become law if the bill is voted out of the Election Laws Committee, which means it would then go to the floor of both the State House and the State Senate.
I'm here at the House of Representatives with my sponsor, and this is where the bill will be voted on if it makes it to the floor.
When we actually take this bill up, this is where it'll come, is to the House chamber, and this is where we'll actually hear the arguments for it, and we'll actually get to cast our votes in support of this fantastic idea.
If both the State House and the State Senate vote with the majority for it.
I'm here on the Senate floor, and this is where the senators would vote on the bill if we can get it out of the Election Laws Committee.
Then it would have to be signed by the governor. And now we're waiting for the Election Laws Committee to make its decision on all of the bills for this session. So we're still in limbo, but it is a pretty well-supported policy. It's a well-supported policy in Massachusetts, and it's a well-supported policy in the Massachusetts State House. It's just whether or not the state legislature is ready to make a move on it this year, or next, or the year after next. And either way, I will keep fighting. I was 16 when I proposed this legislation to my representative, and I'm now 21 years old. So I'm not going anywhere until this passes. This is a legislative movement that we are going to continue to support until first-time voters really get the right that they deserve.
So good. So great. Yeah, we can clap for Samantha. It's been so wonderful getting to hear these stories that you've captured, and hearing from youth and really get a peek into their world and hear about what they care about. So part of what I've been doing in my work is thinking about how can we hear more from youth? How can we find where they're having these conversations, and how can we be a part of those conversations or just capture more about what kids are saying about civics and history and things like that. So I'd love to ask the audience a question. And you can just shout it out, but if I asked you to go look for more information, where would you go to find more information? A website. Where would you go, Elizabeth?
Google.
Google. You Google it. If you ask TikTok, thank you. If you ask a young person this question, they will say YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. Now, I think most recent report I've seen, 60% of young people say YouTube is their preferred search engine. which is interesting to me because I don't think of YouTube as a search engine, but that is how it is often being used. And I think something around that number 2 is most young people get their news from social media. So if this is where young people are going to consume news, to learn things about civics and history, then maybe our stuff needs to be there. So part of what I have been doing is looking at some of the wonderful video that Elizabeth has created and recontextualizing that for those social platforms. So taking your beautiful 5-minute videos and trying to find the juiciest 30 seconds to cut and put on YouTube and something called YouTube Shorts. This is YouTube's most discoverable side of the platform right now, where people are just kind of browsing and searching for content. So we've taken especially a lot of your, what I'm gonna call explainer videos, and kind of cut them down. So if, say, someone is looking on YouTube and saying, hey, what does this mean in the context of our government? We can have our content there and they can find our information, because who knows what else they might be finding on those platforms. So that's one thing we've been experimenting with, and also using those platforms as an opportunity to start conversations, to seed questions and just kind of see how people are thinking about these topics. Is something that we've been kind of experimenting with and looking with. But with those platforms, you know, you're not necessarily getting young people per se, you're opening it up to a whole audience. So another thing that we have been thinking about is how can we create maybe a live streaming event where we can have an opportunity for young people to tune in and ask questions and engage with us in a different kind of way, different from some of our other events or webinars we've done in the past. So something we are thinking about for this spring is something called a virtual field trip, where we are going to create programming and have that be both a webinar but also a Facebook Live and a YouTube Live. So we can kind of bring an expert in the field in, you know, we're really spoiled here in Boston, in a wonderful location, rich with history, and kind of have an opportunity for young people to, in real time, ask questions of an expert and engage with them. We're kind of borrowing this idea from NOVA, which our colleagues at GBH, they do amazing field trips with scientists where they bring in experts and open it up so people can ask them questions. We'd love to do something similar for a historic or a civics expert as well, and let young people really have the opportunity to ask the questions that they want to ask, and we can kind of hear more about what they're thinking. So that's kind of what we've been doing. We'd love to open it up to questions. If anybody has questions for us, there's a microphone here right up front. You can come up and ask. We'll hold it open for about 2 minutes or so to see if anybody has any questions. I'd love to know, Elizabeth, do you have a favorite video you've worked on to this point?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I have a favorite, but there have been a couple. So in Youth Stand Up, we, as I said, we feature both contemporary but also historic stories. So that would be, for example, I interviewed Moctezuma Esparza. He was one of the leaders of the 1968 East LA Chicano walkouts. So he's telling us a story about when he was a young person. So I have loved all the contemporary stories. I've been so inspired by these young people today and all that they're doing. But the opportunity also to connect with someone like Moctezuma and hear his firsthand perspective about a historic event like that has also been really special as well.
Yeah.
Anyone has questions or you'd like to share a story, come on up. We're going to keep the questions open for a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Great. You could talk about YouTube Shorts and which ones have done well.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit more about YouTube Shorts and which one has done really well. You did a Why It Matters video on U.S. citizenship, and we took a clip of that, just of the, can you remember who the expert was for that?
I'm sorry, I can't recall her name right now, but it was a professor at Columbia who was amazing.
Yes. And there was one clip where she just explained U.S. citizenship in maybe 30 seconds or less. And that video, within its first, I'd say 2 days being on YouTube, got over 10,000 views. So clearly it was something that people were searching for and interested in, and I was happy that that met that need.
I know, I was so pleased too. I couldn't believe how well it did. So
yeah,
it was great.
Great. Well, if nobody has any questions, feel free to come find Elizabeth or I after. We're happy to chat one-on-one. We're going to go away now for about 30 minutes, so definitely grab some snacks, grab another drink, go to the bathroom, and then come back here at 3. We will have our wonderful Alicia from the education team who will be in conversation with Cameo George, the executive producer of American Experience. So thank you all.
And I just wanted to mention one more thing. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock at the Trident Cafe, if you are interested in implementing You Stand Up in your classroom, we're doing research now, and we're looking for teachers to participate in that. So if you want to come by the breakfast, free coffee, free snacks, and hear more about that opportunity, and You Stand Up, we'd love to see you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone.